Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime with Liverpool taking on RB Salzburg tomorrow night/evening in the Champions League. We've been shafted with the slightly bizarre kickoff time even of 5 minutes to 6 or 5 minutes to 7 if you're going by European time. But either way, it's a little bit different to your standard Champions League kickoff of 8 PM UK time, which is rather annoying for some of us. But as it stands, that is what we've been given. And obviously Napoli and Genk, who are playing the other match in the group, will be kicking off at the same time to make sure no one gets any kind of unfair advantage or anything like that. But of course, this is a massive game for Liverpool because once again, our Champions League group stage campaign, try as we might, despite being given all the opportunities to avoid this kind of situation, it has gone down to the last game. It has gone down to match day 6, and Liverpool go into the game knowing that they need at least some sort of result to almost definitely guarantee qualification for the next round, the knockout round of Europe's Premier competition, and of course the competition where we are currently defending our title. Now, when you look at the actual permutations, it's certainly not exactly doom and gloom for Liverpool. We are in the best position, the most advantageous position of I think anyone in the group at the moment. We're still first place. We've got 10 points. Napoli are just 1 point behind us with 9 points in second, and then Salzburg, who we are playing, have got 7 points in third place. So of course, if Salzburg do win, they will almost definitely go through on head-to-head record. Obviously, it's done on head-to-head in Europe rather than goal difference. So it's essentially, you look at it like a two-legged tie. If they were to win by 2, they'd go through because we only beat them by 1 at Anfield. If they were to win by 1, obviously, again, we'd be level on points. But they'd probably go through because of away goals, given the fact that it was a 4-3 win for us at Anfield. So unless Liverpool were to win by 5 goals to 4 or something ridiculous like that, then it would be them who goes through on the head-to-head record. So if Salzburg win, the general line is they're almost definitely going to go through at our expense as a result, unless, of course, Napoli lose to Genk. Of course, if Liverpool draw the game, they'll finish 3 points ahead of Salzburg on 11 points, which means that if Napoli draw as well against Genk, we'll finish top of the group. If Napoli beat Genk, then we'll finish second place in the group. The main thing that you need to really know is if Liverpool win the game, they go through, and they go through as leaders of the group, which hopefully guarantees us some sort of favourable draw in the next round. So, of course, this is essentially, once again, as it always is in the Champions League, an early knockout match for us. And I think Jurgen Klopp has been preparing for this game under that kind of guise. You look at the way he's rotated the squad over the last couple of games, and he's always done this around about December time. There's always been one game, normally it is either the first game of this month or the last game of the previous month, November, where suddenly he just completely switches up from playing the same team week in, week out to just immediately going to having 5 changes pretty much every single game. But I do think the way he's rotated the squad around, where basically half of the original 11 that have been playing most of the season played in the derby, and then it was kind of the other half that ended up playing against Bournemouth, bar a couple of defenders, obviously Virgil van Dijk, a must start for all of these games, regardless of how much we rotate, unless it's in one of the weaker, less important competitions like the FA Cup or the League Cup. But the way he has pretty much given everyone some sort of rest over the last couple of games tells me that not only is he looking to rotate, he's also looking to put our absolute all into this match. And I don't think he's going to rotate as heavily. I don't think we're going to see as many squad players. I think this is the game where Jurgen Klopp has been preparing so that he can field his absolute first choice 11, because it is, a win or bust game, essentially. Obviously, the league is so important, and we can't really afford to drop points anywhere there, but we're playing weaker opposition there as well, by and large, in the league. Bournemouth and Everton are nowhere near the standard that Red Bull Salzburg are at. Obviously, we still consider ourselves way ahead of Salzburg. The table doesn't lie. We all know that Liverpool are European royalty, and Salzburg are nowhere near that level yet. But as we saw also at Anfield, they will probably give us a game once again, and we have got to be wary of that. And it was good to see Jordan Henderson, who joined Jurgen Klopp in the press conference today, talking about this game and saying that they've looked back at the game at Anfield against Salzburg and looked at the areas that we can improve. Obviously, we won the game. We had some fantastic spells. The first half hour and the last half hour were fantastic. The middle half hour, as fans, the less said about that, the better. Hopefully, there's been plenty said about it on the training ground, because there's clearly issues there. Salzburg, I think, took us a little bit by surprise, and that was evidenced by the fact that once they did draw the game back level and we did get our act together, we were a much better outfit. They didn't really cause us any problems after they brought the game back to 3-3, and we managed to work our way through their defence and get the 3 points that we needed. So it's good to see that. I think we're going to hopefully have ruled out that element of surprise, that we now know what to expect from Salzburg and how they're going to try and break us down, not just how they generally play as a team. And it was also great to see Jordan Henderson. He came out with a fantastic line that Jurgen Klopp repeated in the press conference as well, where he said, "This is the biggest game of our lives because it's the next one." And I think that is a fantastic attitude that this Liverpool team has got at the moment. It's one of Jurgen Klopp's most important things is that there's always 100% focus on the next game. Never thinking about the previous games, never thinking about the tables or anything like that, never thinking about what we've got to do after this. You know, there is no thought given at the moment by the players or the coaching staff to the game against Watford at the weekend, apart from obviously the medical team will be talking about fitness and rotation and stuff like that, and Klopp will have to take that into consideration. But when it comes to where the players are at mentally, they are 100% focused on this game, and as a result, it is the most important game of their lives at the moment, and I think that is probably what is behind Liverpool's fantastic run at the moment. Every game is, in a way, treated like a cup final, and this one will be no different. So team news going into the game, there's a little bit to talk about. Most of the long-term layoffs, they're still unavailable. Jurgen Klopp mentioned both Joel Matip and Fabinho said neither of those are going to be back by Christmas, he expects, which is understandable with Fabinho. I think we're all expecting him to come back sometime in mid to late January. A little bit of a blow for Joel Matip because we have been working on a sort of fortnightly basis with that, where it always felt like he was on the verge of coming back because we never quite discovered the extent of the injury. We got given a little bit of a hint in a recent press conference from Jurgen Klopp where he said that the recovery wasn't progressing quite as fast as he'd hoped, but the fact that Joel Matip won't be available for another month, certainly not until the new year, which means he will have been out up to that point for 11 weeks, is a hell of a blow for us. But thankfully, Dejan Lovren is back in training after coming off right towards the end of the first half against Bournemouth. I think that certainly looked like a precautionary issue. You know, it was getting to a point in the game where we had a 2-0 lead. We were reasonably comfortable as we've really been at any point so far in the Premier League campaign, and Bournemouth weren't asking too many questions. And with Joe Gomez already on the pitch and the option to bring Trent Alexander-Arnold on, I think it just made sense to take Dejan Lovren off as a precautionary measure. I think at the end of the day, it only seemed like cramp in his leg he really had. So he should be absolutely fine. He's been training with the first team squad today. He's travelled with the squad as well. The same with Adam Lallana, who missed out with a minor knock against Bournemouth. At the end of the day, I think really all that's really done for him is giving him a little bit of a rest ahead of this game. Adam Lallana sadly has not travelled with the squad. Unlike Wijnaldum and Lovren, he didn't train with the first team. He trained on his own today. I think he's got a little programme to help build him back up to full fitness. The plan being that he will return to full first team training on Thursday and he'll be able to be a part of the squad for that game against Watford on Saturday. But in the meantime, he hasn't travelled with the squad for this game. So as for how I think we're actually going to line up then, I think of course it's going to be Alisson Becker in goal, finally getting his first clean sheet of the season so far at the weekend against Bournemouth. The less said about the fact that maybe the reason he got it was because they didn't have a shot on target, the better. Let's just focus on the fact that the defence worked well. The goalie did his job, I guess, as much as he can do when he doesn't have a single save to make. And hopefully that does give them a little bit of a boost going into this game. Jurgen Klopp talked after the game against Bournemouth about how that was the buzzword in the dressing room after the match. Everyone was talking about the clean sheet. The players were clearly desperate for it. And hopefully it just gives them the confidence to kick on now, where they don't get into the habit of conceding late goals every single game, of course. This is a huge, huge game for Salzburg, and I'll come on to them later. But we want to really calm down the crowd. We've got a bit of an issue here where we are playing away from home. Generally, we kind of suit playing these games. Of course, our last two win or bust games in the Champions League in the group stage were Spartak Moscow at home, which we won 7-0, and Napoli at home, which we won 1-0. And the atmosphere, I think, was a key part in both of those games. And Salzburg will be looking to do a similar thing and use that kind of tool against us. So I think it'll be very important not to let them get any goal, because that gives them a foothold in the game. It's a similar thing to what I was talking about before the Bournemouth game. You know, if you keep a clean sheet, it keeps that crowd down and it keeps the players subdued a little bit as a result. So Alisson will be in goal. Hopefully he can get another clean sheet to add to his tally for the season. Ahead of him, I think Virgil van Dijk, obviously, definitely going to start. And I think Dejan Lovren partners him as well. I've seen people saying that, pardon me, they think it's going to be Joe Gomez because he's had more chances in the Champions League than the Premier League this season, and of course got moved to that centre-back role after Dejan Lovren came off against Bournemouth and did a reasonably fine job, although again there is the caveat of Bournemouth not really offering too much threat going forward, if we're being perfectly honest. But I just think Lovren seems the more stable option at the moment, and given the nature of the game, the fact we do have to win this one, or at least get some sort of result to go through, I think Jurgen Klopp will play it safe and go with Dejan Lovren alongside Virgil van Dijk. And then the fullbacks, Trent Alexander-Arnold, fresh from his sort of rest at the weekend. Obviously, He ended up coming on in something like the 40th minute, so he didn't get the rest that I think we really would have wanted for him. But hopefully he's a little bit more refreshing. I think he is an absolute must to start this game. On the other side, I think Robertson has to start as well. Like I said, I think we're going to go full strength for this match, and then we can think about rotation in the next game against Watford. We've obviously considered it in the previous 2 Premier League games, and then, of course, going forward into the League Cup and the Club World Cup semi-final and stuff like that. This is the game where we just have to get the absolute best out of the best possible players on the pitch. So I think Robertson does start at left-back and then hopefully gets a rest a little bit further down the line. Moving on to the midfield, I think these number 6 had to be Jordan Henderson. He's been in fantastic form at the moment, put in another brilliant display against Bournemouth at the weekend, including a gorgeous assist for the opening goal from Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. So I think he retains his place as the number 6. I think joining him in the midfield 3 will be Gini Wijnaldum. Again, fresh from the weekend, he's had a little bit of a rest now, and I think this is a great game for him to be playing in alongside Henderson. You know, they do, as I said in my pre-match video for the Bournemouth game, they offer so much in terms of working as a 2. You know, if Henderson wants to push forward, Wijnaldum has more, is more than capable of dropping into that number 6 role to compensate for that, and the 2 of them almost work as a double pivot in that sense. Not in the sense for 4-2-3-1, because of course there's an extra midfielder there, but it does free up that extra midfielder to do a lot more in terms of linking up with the attack. And with that in mind, I think Jurgen Klopp will play Naby Keita as a 3rd midfielder in the system after a very, very impressive showing in the game against Bournemouth at the weekend. I think these are the type of games that work for him. He is, of course, ex-Red Bull Salzburg, so he's played with them before. He knows them very well. At least I think he's ex-Red Bull Salzburg. He's ex-Red Bull Leipzig, and they tend to follow that kind of path. You know, Sadio Mane played at Salzburg. Yes, I've just remembered he is Red Bull Salzburg because he actually played as a number 6 there, which was very interesting given that he's never really been deployed in that role under Jurgen Klopp. But maybe that is something to consider in the future, certainly against lower league opposition. But we won't get into that just yet. What matters is he has played against Red Bull Salzburg. He's played for them, so he understands the team. He's played in the stadium before. It will represent a great opportunity for him to really kind of announce himself. We've always been waiting for him to really kickstart his Liverpool career, and he's had moments like the Bournemouth game at the weekend. But I think he really needs is an extended run in the team. And I think under the circumstances with the opposition we've got to play coming up, Jurgen Klopp will be willing to give Naby Keita more of a run in the starting 11. And I think this will be a fantastic game for him to showcase his talents, both in terms of linking up with the attack that is facilitated by the Henderson and Wijnaldum double pivot, but also in a really massive game when there is a lot on the line, our Champions League future on the line, the chance to enter those knockout stages. He can really, really make a name for himself here, and I think Jurgen Klopp will be willing to give him that opportunity. So I think he will start alongside Henderson and Wijnaldum in midfield. And then moving on to the attack, I think we stick with the big guns. I've seen a couple of shouts for maybe playing Divock Origi down the middle after he was obviously rested at the weekend, but put in a fantastic showing in the Merseyside derby. But I think we stick with what we know for now at least, and go with Salah on the right, Mane on the left, and Roberto Firmino down the middle. So taking a look at Red Bull Salzburg then, obviously this is an absolutely massive game for them, and all the build up around the club and the words coming out from it over the last couple of days has definitely built up to that. Obviously Erling Haaland, I think is how you pronounce it, the Norwegian striker who's just been bagging goals left, right and centre for them, is the centrepiece of that. He's the centrepiece of the media strategy at the moment. He's the golden boy of the club. He's really set them alight on the Champions League stage. He's been integral to getting them this far in terms of putting them in a position where they can now win against a team like Liverpool and push themselves through to the knockout stages while claiming a fantastic scalp as well. And Jurgen Klopp talked about it in his press conference as well and said essentially there's only one way you can stop a striker of that quality, and that's to just stop the supply line to them, to basically ensure that they never get the ball. And I think a lot of work will have been put into that, because one thing that really frustrated me about that game against Salzburg when we shipped 3 to them in the space of about half an hour at Anfield was the fact that while a couple of their goals were just fantastic strikes and you can't really account for them, you can't really criticise the defence too much, the goal that Erling Haaland scored is essentially just one where one of their players, I think it was Minamino, gets to the byline, crosses the ball in, and he has a tap in from a couple of yards out. That is not the kind of chance that Liverpool should be conceding. Our defence should only be allowing the kind of goals that, like I said, you can't account for. Wonderful strikes, wonderful finishes, moments of individual brilliance. One where just a clever team move undoes your defence and lays it on the plate for a fantastic striker like Erling Haaland shouldn't be happening. And I think Liverpool will be putting so much effort into making sure we don't concede those kind of chances again. But of course, he's been chatting a lot. He's said that he thinks they're going to win 3-1 when he was asked for his score prediction. He reckons he's going to score all the goals as well. He's got the kind of confidence you expect from a young striker who's posting those kind of numbers. He's not going to post those kind of numbers unless he has that kind of confidence. But It's no surprise to hear these kind of things coming out, and I think it's so important that Liverpool respond to that in terms of the way they manage their way through the game. We simply cannot afford another game like the one at Anfield. If they do get back into the game and make it 3-3, then this suddenly becomes, you know, an absolutely hellish nightmare scenario for Liverpool, because they will have the entire crowd willing them forward this time. And I think it would be interesting to see how they responded in that scenario, because I think they almost bit themselves on the backside in the game at Anfield, in that I think they equalised too early. It's a strange cliche in football and it doesn't always ring true, but I think it definitely rang true in that game. When they did score, they suddenly went back into their shells. Before that, they'd been all over Liverpool. Everyone had been thinking, what the hell has happened to Jurgen Klopp's boys here? They've just disintegrated. They're allowing chance after chance. They've got no control over the midfield, no control over their own third of the pitch either. And Salzburg were at times running rings around us. And then they get the goal, and Liverpool click into a gear, and Salzburg go down a couple gears. They suddenly they get a nosebleed from how highly they are achieving, essentially. They suddenly get worried and realise they've got something to lose. And it'll be really interesting to see whether a similar thing happens. I think if they've got, you know, what Simeone calls the cojones on them, if they've got what it takes to see themselves through to the next round of the Champions League, and if they deserve to go through, then you'd imagine they'd be able to deal with that pressure. But the thing is, this Liverpool side is so good at dealing with that pressure so far this season. We've seen it already time and time again in the league, and I think what really let us down against Napoli was we didn't have that same kind of win or bust feeling, that kind of inevitability to the fact we have to win, so we're going to make it happen no matter what, that has driven us through this league campaign. That's what's been getting us, you know, 94th minute winners, 87th minute equalisers, and all the ridiculous stuff that's happened already in this Premier League campaign. And because we didn't have that energy, that drive, that necessity to win in the game against Napoli, we almost weren't able to force the issue like we have been able to do in the league. But I think now we do have to win. Now, you know, we will be able to force that inevitability. The Liverpool that we've seen in the league, I think, will come to town in the game against Salzburg, and you'll see a much more mature and assured performance than the one we saw at Anfield. So I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think it will be brilliant. I think Salzburg will give their absolute all. I think it's interesting to see how they'll set up, because everything that Jurgen Klopp and Jordan Henderson was saying was about how they broke us down on the counter-attack, and that's how they caught us by surprise. I feel like they're going to struggle to do that in front of their own fans, because there's going to be an expectation that they see a little bit more of the ball. I think Liverpool will be a bit more cautious in terms of how many men they commit forward and stuff like that, which is why I'm fascinated to see if Naby Keita starts this game, and if he does, what kind of role he plays, because I think he'll be hugely tested at both ends of the pitch should he play in this match. So I, for one, would really like to see him play. But let me know who you want to see play in this game down below. Let me know how you think it's going to pan out. Like I said, I think Liverpool are going to win it, because we tend to win games at the moment. That's just what we do. But there is just that added spice of, you know, it's even more intense than the league now. In the league now, with the lead we've got, drop points, annoying but not a disaster. Going into the Europa League, not necessarily a disaster, but it would be a massive disappointment for Liverpool, given we are currently defending that Champions League crown. So I think we're going to win. I don't think it's going to be as crazy as the game at Anfield. I don't think it's going to be an easy win by any stretch of the imagination. If I had to put money on a result, I'd put it on 2-0. Let me know how you think it's going to go down in the comments below. Apart from that, that is all for today's video. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos I've been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at @LivesFocusTV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully booked our place in the Champions League round of 16. Until then, bye for now.